Welcome to the Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. My very special guest today is Taylor Morgan, who's a Marine Corps veteran. So welcome to the show.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool. So I'll dig into your bio a little bit and we'll have a chat. So you're a Marine Corps veteran, holistic style lifestyle specialist, podcast host, and founder of the Captain's Lifestyle. So this is an interesting kind of thing. You also help social entrepreneurs maximize their health, happiness, and productivity so they can grow their impact, optimize their work-life balance, and fulfill their entrepreneurial vision. Cool. That's a mouthful, man. So what's your definition of a social entrepreneur then? That's an interesting kind of take.
Yeah, basically any entrepreneur who is in business to improve something, whether that's other people, the environment, help animals. Basically anybody whose sole purpose isn't just personal monetary gain. So businesses who are making some sort of impact, whether through charity or their product or service.
Gotcha. Right. And at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur business, it's got to be more than the money anyway, because the money's not always great. So if you got in it for the money, then maybe you got in the wrong business sometimes.
Yes.
So how long have you been doing this for? I assume how long were you in the Marine Corps?
I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. After I got out, I was a CrossFit coach for a while. And then I started the Captain's Lifestyle in late 2018, but I specifically started coaching entrepreneurs at the beginning of 2020. So right when everything crazy happened, but thankfully people want to improve themselves and their business. So my business did real well. So I've been doing it for about a year and a half now, and it's been going well.
And I think that, obviously everybody trapped inside, right? It's like suddenly one of two things happens. They just start eating. I actually got a client of mine that's actually in the UK, and she's been effectively locked down for 8 months. She hasn't left the house except to go shopping for 8 months.
Oh, man.
And you think to yourself, your brain just starts going fuzzy, and I think, people just start eating or they go the other way. You see people get into fitness, but a lot of people just I guess it's a natural thing, as soon as you get into a crisis situation, you go for comfort, right?
Well, that's the thing, is it's not natural. If you're healthy, humans are meant to thrive. Our natural state is thriving. But unfortunately, we've got away from that as a society to now, it's normal to struggle to get out of bed in the morning. You're groggy all day. You come home, you just want to binge watch TV and eat bad food. That's deemed as normal now, when in reality, that is the opposite of how humans were designed to live.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. People did take the lockdown basically one of two ways. They played the victim mentality, where it's like, oh, government says it's lockdown. I can't leave my house. I'm just gonna eat whatever I want and, complain about life. Or take the other path to where, lockdown, whatever, I'm still going to get outside because the sunshine is beneficial. I'm still going to work out, even though the gyms are closed. You don't need a gym to do push-ups, air squats, sit-ups. It's all just excuses.
It's quite funny, actually, because I play squash. I was playing squash 5 times a week. So suddenly I'm not going anywhere because I couldn't go play squash, because squash is one of the more high-risk sports for whatever reason. I guess 2 people in a room bumping into each other is not good. So I tried everything. I was almost built my own squash court at one point. I was sort of trying to think of this thing out, the handyman round, thinking, how could we build walls here and stuff. In the end, we didn't do anything, because luckily we came out of lockdown fairly quickly. But at one point there, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to play squash again if I can't build my own court? I have a friend that actually, a doctor that actually got his own squash court. I was tempted to ring him up at one point there. So yeah, the thing is, your brain sort of starts trying to figure something out. And I think that's the thing. If you sit there and just go, oh, well, that's it, I can't do anything, then nothing comes to light. So you just sit there and veg out and watch Netflix all day. And I think the danger here is that, to me, it was and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have an opportunity to actually get some stuff done, right? Because now you maybe not necessarily got the same amount of traffic coming to you, because particularly in March last year, everything just died off. I think it's an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself or get stuff done that you've been putting off.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it was that. But for me, almost nothing changed in my day-to-day lifestyle, just
Yeah,
because I
nothing
had
here either,
already,
actually, because they're working from
yeah,
home. It's normal, right? It's just I think people really struggle with that mindset, didn't they?
yeah, as long as you have the proper high performance lifestyle habits in place, any external, thing that happens besides some, huge natural disaster, nothing should really interrupt your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, yeah, okay, the gyms are closed. That doesn't mean I'm not going to work out. I'm just going to work out at home. Schedule still stays the same. But a lot of people, they weren't used to that. And working from home became a real big issue because it all turned into gray area. There was no separation between work life and home life.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem. That causes massive amounts of stress and inability to focus because, if you're working from home, that's the same place where you're supposed to relax, and it's just very confusing. And if you don't have those, like I mentioned, those habits in place, it can wreak havoc on your life.
And I think that, and I think part of the problem was that a lot of people didn't necessarily have a place to work at home either. Like, I mean, if you work from home, you designate a space, you find a room, do whatever. But if suddenly you're thrust into it, you're working out of the living room or whatever, and you've got traffic going on and everybody's at home driving each other nuts. So at the end of the day, it's not set up that way. So I think that's probably a challenge. But I think you talk about discipline or you talk about habits, and I think that's an important thing. So what do you sort of see as the habits that people, particularly working from home, is essentially the habits they should have to do that successfully?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a loaded question. There's so many different things, but I'll give some of the big ones.
Give me what you do, I guess. So is it what works for you is lit off for someone else, right?
Yeah. Like you mentioned, I wrote a few articles for different publications. And one of the things that was coming up all the time was, you're right, you absolutely have to designate a set workspace. That's once you go to that space or sit down at the desk, wherever it is, go into that room, that that's only for work. So you should not be working from your bedroom, ideally. If you do have to work and sleep or eat whatever in the same room, you should have at least a designated space. So a table, a desk, something to where you don't do anything but work in that area, just to keep everything separate. Because that's really important, to have some sort of clear separation. It's like, okay, now I'm working and now I'm in my regular day-to-day life. That's very important. But I'd say in general, for everybody, not just people working from home, you need to have set morning rituals and a set evening ritual. So your morning and evening should be you. It should not be work or anything else. Your morning and your evening is time for you. So for me, I teach the 4-3-2-1-30 method for your nightly ritual, which I'll go into each of them real quick. 4 is 4 hours before bed. Make sure you finish up all intense exercise. So as long as you work out in the morning or afternoon, that's fine. You just don't want to work out too close to bedtime, because that raises both your core body temperature and your cortisol levels, two of the things that you want to reduce right before bed. The 3 is 3 hours before bed. Finish up your last meal, because you don't want to go to bed with a big meal in your stomach, digesting. That doesn't help your sleep. That also raises your core body temperature, digesting food. And you want your core body temperature to drop by 2 degrees in order to get into deep sleep, which is the restorative sleep where your body has a chance to regenerate itself. It's when anabolic hormones are released, like testosterone and HGH. And then the 2 hours before bed is limit all forms of stimulation. So especially light from screens. The blue light shuts off melatonin production. That makes it very difficult to fall asleep. Overhead LED lights, anything like that. As well as sound stimulation. Like, you don't want to be listening to hard rock right before you go to bed. So like soothing, calming sounds are okay. And then the 1 hour before bed is limit your liquid intake, especially if you have to wake up to pee in the middle of the night, because that can greatly disrupt your sleep. So that's a simple way to improve it. Just cut out the liquids. And then also start your nightly ritual at 1 hour before bed. So no work. You shouldn't be working right up until you fall asleep. That also raises cortisol. So instead, do things like journaling or meditation, stretching, reading, something like that. Anything that helps wind you down and helps you relax. And then the 30 is take your supplements. And this is going to vary per person, but something I recommend everybody take is magnesium, just because up to 80% of the population are deficient in magnesium. And magnesium plays a role in over 300 different bodily functions. Most notably, and why you want to take it before bed, is it reduces stress and improves the quality of deep sleep. So that's just one example. But so that's the 4-3-2-1-30 method.
Right, makes sense. And I think, like for me, I when I finish up on Friday afternoons, I have an office and I walk out of that office. I don't tend to walk back into that office for the entire weekend unless I go fix something or get something. But it's almost like in my mind, that's work, and I'm not going to work. And I think you got to put, as you say, you got to put those barriers up in terms of saying, okay, that's work, that's not work, because otherwise, if you work from home, you will be always working, and you'll end up in a situation where it gets very blurry, and then obviously you're working up to it late times at night, and then that sort of, as you say, because without proper sleep, you're going to end up in an endless pit, aren't you?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is, you'll be always working and you'll really not be getting anything done, because if it's all gray area and there's no separation, you could be thinking about family, you could be thinking about what you're going to do after work, you could be thinking about the presentation that's due, because it's all blended together. Yes. And you can't multitask. So if your mind is thinking about all these different things at once, the quality of your work is going to diminish greatly. So that's one of the big reasons why you need that clear separation, so you can be 100% at work or 100% off of work. And to your other point, sleep. If you don't have good quality sleep, nothing else in your life can be at its full potential. You can't be healthy. You can't reach your peak happiness, and you most certainly cannot be as productive as you can be. Sleep is literally the baseline of human performance. It's that important.
It's actually interesting because I read in this book a while back called, I think it's A Brief History of Mankind or whatever, and I don't think that's like the subtitle of it, but one of the things it talks about is that the reason why humans got to where they got today was their brain grew bigger. And the reason their brain grew bigger is because they got able to sleep. And the reason they were able to sleep was they actually essentially engineered dogs to look after them while they slept. So they could actually sleep without stress, because otherwise something would come and eat them. Right? Yeah. And so it was like, it's quite interesting, is it, that obviously that's a fundamental thing that was happening centuries ago, hundreds of years ago. So obviously it's still to this day is the same thing, right? So your brain is probably growing and doing stuff while you're sleeping. But if you've got that stress level, then it's not, isn't it? It's going backwards possibly. Yeah.
I wish we would have had some of those dogs in the Marine Corps, because in the Marine Corps, when you're out on a mission, you have what's called fire watch. So in the evening, everybody is sleeping, and then you have to have at least one person, but usually more than that, people awake in case something happens.
Something happens, yeah.
So that obviously messes up your sleep cycle.
And you're telling me SEAL Team's wrong, that they have a dog on SEAL Team and you don't really have a dog? You're telling me it's wrong?
I wish we would have had a dog. We didn't. But
right, because on SEAL Team they have this dog, although it comes and goes. It's like I've been watching, because for some bizarre reason on TV in Australia, the SEAL Team is on one channel and they've decided to charge for it, like a free to air channel. And I'm like, you guys are going to eventually put this up. No, they're not going to. So in the end, I've signed up, then I'm going to binge it just so I can get through the thing, because they won't actually put it on free air TV. So, but it's interesting when you look at those sort of scenarios, like a Marine, you're very controlled about what you do and when you do it right. So that does set your foundation for that kind of much more disciplined kind of approach, isn't it? Like at the end of the day, most people don't grow up that way, do they? They just basically, jump around. They're never really shown any sort of regimen or discipline, are they?
Yeah, well, I think the disciplinary aspect of the Marine Corps was great. I think everybody needs some form of that in their life, especially in modern society. A lot of people don't have the discipline, just because to be politically correct, like we just have to accept everything. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's like, no, it's not. You can't just do whatever you want. You have to have some sense of discipline.
Yes.
Jocko Willink is a famous Navy SEAL, author of Extreme Ownership. His phrase is discipline equals freedom. The more disciplined you are in anything, in your diet, in your workout regimen, in your work-life balance, the more freedom you will then have. Because if you don't have discipline in your diet, if you stick to your diet Monday through Friday, but then Saturday, Sunday, you eat whatever you want, you're not going to have the body you want. So and that goes with everything. So the more discipline you have, the longer you can delay gratification, the more long-term success you will see. But everybody just wants to feel good now. They make the comfortable decision right now, and then they suffer down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. Nothing comes good without a bit of effort, right? So it's like,
exactly.
And I think that's the other danger of people. I think if you're in a situation in business where you need to get something done that's very important, and you're not healthy at the same time, your health will suffer as a result. Like, I got bowel cancer when about 2016. And I really believe it was from a 7-year prior period where basically I was under extreme pressure and extreme stress for that 7-year period. And I must guarantee that that's what caused it. Since then, and you sort of develop some stuff around it. But I mean, that was an impossible situation. I had no way out of it at the time. But at the end of the day, it changed your lifestyle. You get, you say, look, I'm going to work some hours a week. I've never had any symptoms ever again. And so it's almost like you look at it and think, yeah, that's a very good way to kind of be your own experiment, if you like, pay attention to your body. And the only reason that I was even diagnosed early enough was I was paying attention enough to go, well, hey, this is not right. And I think that's part of the thing is if you don't feel right, then it's not normal, right? So
that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like I mentioned at the beginning, people think that it's normal to have trouble getting out of bed on Monday morning and be groggy and need 3 cups of coffee to get through the day and, be stressed out in the evenings. Like that's not normal. Another good example is aging. People always tell me, oh, you're so young. It's just because your metabolism, you'll see when you're older, you have these aches and pains, you'll gain weight. I'm like, no, if you take care of your body will take care of you, no matter what age you're at. My dad is a perfect example of this. He was a professional baseball player and he continued playing his whole entire life up until about 5 years ago. He had to stop because he wasn't enjoying it anymore because he was always hurt. His arm hurt to throw. And he just contributed to getting older. And so he retired from baseball. And then me being the health coach that I am, I started helping him with his sleep, with his diet. He started exercising even more, reducing stress, all that type of stuff. And now he's back to playing baseball because it wasn't the aging. It was that he wasn't optimizing his health for performance. So now he says that he feels better than he did 10 years ago. And he's 66 and still playing baseball. It's not aging. It's that you're not taking care of your body. People just give the aging excuse because that gives them an excuse. Yeah, it's easy. Exactly. It takes the guilt off them. I'm just getting older. I can't do anything about it.
Because the reality is the body renews itself. So you got to wonder why at some point it would stop doing that. It's like it would be pretty bad design when you think about it. Is that at some point the universe says, okay, that's it. End of the story. No more.
Yeah. Humans aren't supposed to die of chronic disease. All forms of chronic disease are 100% preventable because they're 100% lifestyle related. So cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, all of those are 100% preventable and reversible based on like actual healthy lifestyle habits. So getting out in the sunshine, connecting with nature, sleeping well, eating specific to you, not just some fad diet that you see on the news, exercising, building relationships. It all goes into it. The answer is not medications as commercial have us believe.
Because it's never ending. Like, I said to the doctor once about taking some tablet. I said, so once I take this is going to be it, isn't it? I'm stuck with it. She said, yeah. I said, no, I'm not doing it. Because that means that you've actually got to a situation where you actually have to give up on that particular thing because now you're supplementing whatever that was supposed to be. And it's never-ending streets. And I think that's the thing. Once you start medication, people think, oh, I'll just take it for a while and go off it. No, once they've got you, that's it. They've got you.
Yeah, that's the problem with Western medicine is that it's a Band-Aid solution. So the example that I like to give is if you felt a pain in the bottom of your foot, would you take an aspirin to get rid of the pain and not feel it anymore? Or would you take off your shoe, examine, and maybe there's a rock in there that you're stepping on it, and then you just dump out the rock?
Yeah.
So finding the actual cause of the problem as opposed to just masking it with some medication.
And that's typically what doctors do nowadays. I mean, I think apparently years ago, doctors were more holistic, but then they got forced by drug companies to basically medicate. And they said, if you don't medicate, you're in trouble. So they kind of almost get to the point now they don't worry about what causes it. They just worry about what's going to fix it.
Well, I think at least in Western medicine, doctors have almost always been focused on the medication. Like what they treat the symptoms, not the cause. And that's because modern medicine was founded by pharmaceutical companies. That's funded by
they're put into it. And
exactly. And so of course they're going to want to push these. And this is not to say that all medical doctors are bad. Absolutely not. Western medicine is fantastic for acute traumas. If you get into a car accident, don't go.
Disagree with the fact your arm's falling off.
Don't take these herbal supplements. Like you need to go to the hospital. But for anything chronic, lifestyle related that accumulates over time, Western medicine is not the answer. And we're seeing that because people are just getting sicker and sicker.
And I think that's the issue. I mean, it's a case of figuring out what's caused it. And I think the education, I think one of the things that when I see my doctor, he says, oh, well, I'm going to tell you what I think, but then I know you're going to go and research it. So I'll just tell you what, and I'll give you points and you can go look it up and figure it out whether you like it or not. And I think that's a better way to approach it, because at the end of the day that you're taking control over your own body, your own health, what you're taking, as opposed to just taking whatever they say is gold and going, I'll go do that.
I think for too long, we've just, if somebody's a doctor, it's like, okay, whatever they say is true just because they're a doctor. But especially in the world of health and wellness and nutrition, new studies are coming out all the time. So what they learned in medical school 10 years ago does not apply today. There's a lot of the things that I even learned in some of the college classes that I took that are outdated. It takes a long time for the medical and educational system to catch up. And by the time it's caught up, there's already new research out there. So it's always evolving. And doctors they're way too busy to keep up with it.
To read enough stuff.
That's
take it out a bit further. I've been watching a few while back with watching things about planets, right? And the fact that they've sent all these sensors out to find all these satellites to find things out about all these planets. And they've come back and gone, this is what we thought was totally wrong. So this is not what we thought it was. And this is not the way it happened. And this is not, and so all these assumptions that people have relied on for centuries was wrong. So you can't tell me that looking from distance with health and fitness, that's all right 20 years ago, 100 years ago, that you got it right.
And I think the biggest problem is that in order for the medical system or the educational system to change, somebody has to admit that they were wrong. And of course, nobody wants to admit they were wrong. And so it stays the same over and over again until, there's until somebody changes things. But I think that's why it takes so long, because nobody wants to admit that the way we've been doing things for the past however long has not been right.
And overall, they're a slow moving beast, because most of the time it's government backed and related. So the government's got to approve these things. And about the vaccine for COVID, it's about the fastest I've ever seen any government move in their life. But
that's because it's all about the money.
Yeah. Well, it's costing everybody money, right? So including the government. But I think the thing is it just proves to show you that certain things can move faster if they really want to, right? So, and I've heard things about some cancers and stuff. Apparently, they found cures for it, probably as a result of the research from COVID. But the thing is that it's an intense activity looking at something that's got a result, and just proves that you can do it if you really want to. It's just they don't really want to. Right?
Yeah. Well, again, my views are probably a little bit controversial, but I think cancer has been solved. Just live a healthy lifestyle. And when I say healthy, I mean actually healthy, avoiding all these toxic chemicals in plastics, actually eating a diet suitable for you. And that's going to be different from person to person. There's not one good diet. It's, making sure you're drinking good water, because there's a whole host of chemicals that are in a lot of tap water. So really living a healthy lifestyle. And then second, I think that it's all anything related to the government or these big major companies. I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is just behind money. I think that there's some sort of, monetary investment that.
Yeah, well, my friend used to say, if you want to figure out what's going on, follow the money.
Exactly.
Like, figure out where the money is, and then you'll know what's going on, because it's usually motivated by money. And unfortunately, that's the only thing. And like research doesn't get paid without money. So someone's got something's got to happen in some respects. And
that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to work with social entrepreneurs, because they're not motivated by money. I mean, yes, of course they need money. They want more money to live the lifestyle that they want to live, but that's not their primary reason for being in business. Because I would always turn down the clients who wanted to work with me solely for personal gain. I wouldn't want to work with them, because I don't think that you can be happy living that way. Like you mentioned at the beginning, happiness, money does not equal happiness. There has to be some bigger purpose involved.
Well, look at all the movie stars and all the people who make a lot of money. They usually end up being basket cases. Like, they usually end up worse as a result. They reckon most people who win lotto end up poorer in less than 5 years than they actually did when they had won it. So I think money, it's the way how you use it, right? It's the interpretation of that money. And I always believe that money is an exchange of energy at the end of the day. So if someone doesn't tick up on the energy, they don't pay you money anyway. They don't believe that there's an exchange there. And and I think the money gets attracted from that result. So you see people get money at them fast, and then suddenly they do something, you find out they've done something bad, the money goes away really fast, right? Like, just repels. So I think, it is, and I think possibly, the theory of doing the social entrepreneur stuff will mean that they'll probably attract more money anyway as a result of that. So it's almost like it's the opposite of what they expect to happen.
100%. A lot of my clients, and I've interviewed them on my podcast, it's a little bit more difficult in the beginning to be like an eco-friendly startup, for example, because unfortunately, as of now, the price of eco-friendly materials are more expensive than plastic, for example. The easier decision in the short term would be to go with the plastic. But because that goes against their core values and plastic is horrible for the environment, they don't do that. So it costs them a little bit more time, energy, and money up front. But because I believe that the future of entrepreneurship and the whole world is going more towards sustainability, because if we don't, I believe
choice.
We don't have much longer on the earth, then it'll pay off in the long run. So I think the sooner that companies start to realize this, that by paying more for these eco-friendly materials now, it's going to pay off dividends in the long run, because consumers are starting to wake up to this. If you have two identical companies that make the same identical product, but one company uses eco-friendly products and they give back to the environment in some way, and the other company doesn't care, they use plastic, whatever, people don't care if they have to pay a little bit more for the eco-friendly product, because
they're educated.
Exactly. That goes against their morals to do otherwise.
And it was interesting, like, there's an ad on TV at the moment for Volvo, and I don't exactly know the exact wording, but they said something like they're going to, I think it's zero sustainability or whatever that catch cry is, starting today. So they weren't saying, oh, we're going to start in 2035 or something by the time you forget that we mentioned it. They said starting today. And I thought that was an interesting kind of take, because what they're saying is, well, let's just start doing it now, not wait. And maybe they're not going to achieve it straight away, but at least you started today. You didn't put it off for 2, 3 years, 10 years. I think part of the problem is people just need to start today, right?
I think that is one of the big factors of what creates successful companies. And I don't know anything about Volvo or that commercial. They might just be saying it for marketing.
Oh, sure. Although they get in big trouble if someone found out, I'm assuming.
But so if their CEO is optimized, because I believe in order to be a successful CEO, you have to first care about yourself. You have to care about your own health, happiness, and productivity. in order to be successful. And then I think you have to care about your employees. You have to care about their health, happiness, and productivity, because if your employees aren't healthy and happy or productive, you're not going to have a successful business. And then 3, I think that they have to care about the environment in some way, shape, or form, and giving back to the community. So if Volvo's CEO is like that, and their core values, are leading them in this direction, and they're serious about it, I think they're going to be one of the greatest car companies. Because I think a lot of other companies are just saying these things because that's like the new socially acceptable thing to do. Like, yeah, in 20 years, all of our cars are going to be, eco-friendly. And I don't know. I think a lot of it is just a marketing tactic.
Oh yeah, I mean, the marketing guys could have come up with this, and that's the thing. Like, as you say, it's got to be ground from top down. Otherwise, it'll never work because people won't adopt it.
Yeah.
And particularly a company like that, if it wasn't intrinsic in their future, they hadn't decided that was going to be their future, then the engineers are not going to make the cars the way they need to make them. There's no one's going to make any decision in that process. And I guess that comes down to a big why, right? At the end of the day, it's why they're doing it and whether they're going to follow that why.
It has to be a whole entire company culture. That's why I believe that, CEOs have to hire by, reward by, and fire by their mission statement and core values. I think to be a successful business, to be a truly great business, you can't have anybody working for you who just views it as just another job. I think employees need to really enjoy and find purpose behind what they're doing. Because like I said, in order to get the most out of your employees and your business, you have to be healthy, happy, and productive. If you don't like your job, you're not going to be as productive during work. You're just not, because you don't enjoy what you're doing.
And I think the biggest problem too is that nowadays, like, life is too short, right? And so at the end of the day, you spend a long time at work. If you don't enjoy it, then that's, you're not going to get to your deathbed and really think, geez, I wish I spent more time at work, And it's like a catch-22. So I think at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy it, and I think those sort of people can be cancerous to the business anyway. Like, it's almost like you've got yourself a piece of cancer there, because they will just keep on pegging away at the business. And I had 23 staff at one point there, and we probably fired like 80 people over the period of the 7-8 years we traded. And basically, a lot of those times, some people left, but sometimes just weren't suitable. So we did them a favor, because the reality was that the longer they stayed, the worse it would get. And I think you hire fast in terms of in the right people, but hire slow if you're not sure, but fire fast. I always feel like if once you get to a point where you got this gut feeling that's not going to work out, you're just going to keep on just reinforcing the fact that you don't talk yourself out of it. But the reality is, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And on this topic, I have the perfect passage from this book, Own the Day, Own Your Life by Aubrey Marcus. And in here, he says that Bronnie Ware, she was like a critical care nurse. She wrote a book about the top 5 deathbed regrets. Okay. And I don't have all 5, but I have the top 3.
Okay.
Number one, this came from every single male patient that she cared for, was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. People, entrepreneurs especially, they work so hard in their business thinking that that's what they want. But then even if you are successful, you've worked so hard that you've pushed away all your friends. You don't have those connections.
Yeah,
exactly. And then number 3 is, I wish I had let myself be happier. And notice the wording there. I wish I had let myself be happier, because they then understood that happiness was a choice all along. You get to choose whether or not you're happy based on how you live your life. And going to work at a job you don't like, that's a surefire way to not be truly happy.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I mean, I've been through that in the years that I was. So once I get to a point in business where I'm not happy with what's going on, I think there's a saying that I've got a friend that says, if you wake up 3 times in a row thinking about something or someone, and you're not married to them, then you should change it.
Mm.
Like, and it's like, in that situation, like if I wake up 3 times in a row worrying about the same thing, talking about the same person, like if it's a client, and sometimes I'll just fire the client, because it's easier to do that than it is to keep on with that toxic relationship, because I need to do them a favor, because it's in this situation. So I think if you keep thinking about something, that's a really good trigger to say you got to pay attention to that. Don't just keep discounting it and think, oh, well, that's all right, I'll just move on and talk myself out of it and move on. But if your brain keeps on bringing it up, then something's not right.
100%. And I think saying no is like one of the secrets of high performance. I think so many people say yes to taking on new projects just because that's what they're supposed to do or whatever. I think saying no to a lot of things is even better. And I think the first step is defining your mission statement and your core values. That's the first thing I have my clients do in my program, because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know your end goal, how can you ever get there? So
and people will sidetrack you, right? So that's the thing. Like when we started our software business, we've written a software application platform to help authors, content creators and things like that, to help them. And some will come along and they'll go, well, we got this plugin, or we got this thing, or it's like, no, it doesn't fit within what we're going to try to achieve. No, we're not going to do it. Rather than going, oh, let's go down this rabbit hole and have this conversation when I know it's not going to work out. And I think that's being clear about, I don't want, that doesn't fit the plan and the way that I'm working. So that's a no. And you think usually the more successful people become, the less they say yes.
Absolutely. Don't confuse opportunities for, what you should be doing. Just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean that you should do it. I call your mission statement your treasure map, because if you follow it, it leads you to life's ultimate treasure, and only you get to define what that is. It's going to be different for every person. And I call your core values your compass directions, because if you follow your core values, that's going to lead you in the right direction to fulfill your mission statement. So that's just following in the whole captain, pirate theme for
So I know she did go for the pirate side of things, but apparently it was quite funny. I was listening to a podcast episode just recently. It's probably got nothing to do with this, but anyway, and it's a long story. It's about Pirate Bay, but and it's an interesting story. It's on a thing called Darknet Diaries, which I was quite listening to, and it's unsurprising. It's surprising what Pirate Bay did, but one of the things was that I think Warner or whatever, they decided to put this statement on their movies to say, look, don't pirate movies. This is all bad for you and all that sort of stuff. And bizarrely, they put it on the Pirates of Caribbean at the front of it. And it's like, man, you didn't think about that at all, did you? Like, people, pirates are kind of like typically like more romantically sort of looked at. And it's like, and they're trying to sort of like make it out that it's not. So it's almost like it backfired them big time. But apparently that was actually written for Pirate Bay to try and stop people from pirating movies. So it's like words don't necessarily mean what you think they do either.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what's if someone comes to you and says, okay, I've got this, problem, I'm not aligned, I'm not doing what I think I should do, I feel well. What's the first few things you would do with them? Like what's your kind of process?
Well, the first thing I would do is ask them how they're sleeping. Because like I mentioned earlier, sleep is truly the foundation of everything else in your life. If you're not sleeping well, nothing else in your life is going to be at where it should be. So that's number one, is figuring out your sleep. From there, I mean, depending on what the issue is, it could be stress related, it could be nutrition related. Your gut is your second brain. So if you're eating foods that you're not supposed to be eating, that's obviously going to affect your neurotransmitters and the decisions that you make and how you feel and your ability to focus and all that type of stuff. So nutrition is also huge. And then, if they're doing everything right, if their sleep is dialed in, if their nutrition is dialed in, if they're exercising, then it comes down to, these things that most people probably don't need to worry about at first, things like mold and mycotoxin exposure? Are you eating organic foods? Are you grounding? Are you connecting with the earth? There's different like biohacks and supplements that you can use, but those are always my last ditch options. Any type of biohack or supplement should more than likely be the last thing, because you can fix most problems with quality sleep, optimized nutrition, movement, good quality water, exercise, sunlight. And then, you can achieve peak performance by implementing some of these other biohacks.
It's almost like the 80-20 rule, essentially. Like 80% is probably pretty obvious what's going on. And the other 20% is really just optimizing that ultimately, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And so in my program, I have the 6 pillars of optimized human performance. So number 1 is mindset and brain health. And so that's when, we optimize your mindset, and then we dive into fixing neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain. And as well as, like I mentioned, defining your mission statement and your core values. Once that's set, once you have determined where it is you want to go, then we optimize your sleep. That's next. From there, we go into communication. So optimizing your communication with business partners, relationships with your friends and family, because that's hugely important to a long, happy, and fulfilling life, is the quality of your relationships. From there, we dial in your nutrition. So that's 3. 4 is exercise. 5. Oh, wait, I'm skipping one. Mindset, sleep, communication, nutrition, exercise, and then biohacks and different optimization techniques. Yeah.
Okay. And it's pretty obvious, isn't it? But sometimes the obvious doesn't necessarily come to the fray, because it obviously requires some work, right? You've got to have a desire to do this and a reason for doing this, I suppose. And I guess that's why you're looking at the reasons at the start, because without a reason, you're not going to do anything.
100%. And I came up with that specific order because when I was a CrossFit coach, so many people thought that they could come into the gym for 1 hour and that would offset the other 23 hours of their bad lifestyle. And that's just not right. Yeah, that's just not how it works. Like, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating well, if you're stressed out, working out can actually do more harm than good, because sleep is when you recover. Yeah, that's when your muscles recover. So if you're working out but only sleeping 6 hours a night, you might actually be making yourself weaker and more stressed out. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's good. It's interesting. I quite like your approach, and I think obviously it's designed to have a bit of fun on the way through, right? Because otherwise, without a bit of fun, it's not worth it.
If it's not fun, you're not going to do it.
I remember a TEDx talk or something talking about the reason why people live longer is the ability to pick the phone up. In that case, and that was when their friends pass away, that they can keep on going without losing hope and having that grit and that circle of friends they maintain. And you notice in a lot of the situations, like when my father-in-law passed away, he started to withdraw from everybody and wouldn't talk to anybody, and wouldn't eat and all that sort of stuff. And that's basically, it's almost that's so obvious when you see that, but you don't see that as obvious in a normal society. But with him, he was he obviously is getting himself ready to go. And then you see other people doing it at 30. It's like, that's that's way too early to start thinking about stuff like that. And you can see what happens when people isolate themselves, because then there's no one around, and they don't take care of themselves.
That's one of the that's one of the worst things that has come from these lockdowns, is this social isolation. People are now unfortunately scared of other people, because the media has portrayed this massive danger from other people. And even like me, I'm standing outside on the sidewalk in the morning watching the sunrise. There's people walking by. Some people go out of their way to go well around me just because it's their fear. And it's crazy. So that's been a huge issue. I think depression and isolation are a much bigger issue. The Harvard happiness study is one of the best examples of this. I think it might be still ongoing. It's spanned over like 75 years, and they followed people throughout their entire lives. And what they found was that the single biggest correlating factor to a long, healthy, and fulfilling life was not what you ate, was not whether or not you smoked, but it was the quality of your connections with the people who are closest to you, those relationships. So with the lockdown, we now think that we can't go see our loved ones and connect with them, and everything's virtual.
Yeah.
Virtual is better than nothing at all, but it's got to be that in-person connection.
Well, it's crazy because at one point there, like in Australia, Melbourne had lots of outbreaks, and one of the times they said you weren't even allowed to go and see your girlfriend. They're like you were locked down. You couldn't even do that. You couldn't go and see someone who wasn't in your own house.
Yeah, I think that's
moving in together, just because to stop that from happening. Because, So the situation, like, you can't go and see a significant other if they're not in your house. That was one of the rules, or you'll get fined thousands of dollars. And it's like, that's a really bad message to send to anybody, ultimately, isn't it?
I think that's ridiculous. Like, who is the government to tell us that we can't go visit somebody that we love? One of my clients, for example, one of his parents was dying, and they were in the hospital, but because of the rules, he couldn't do anything about it. And that is just heartbreaking to me. If that was me, I don't know, I'd probably get arrested. I would bust through the hospital. F you guys, I'm seeing them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think there's a fine line, and I think one of the challenges moving forward will be, at which point do people start saying, "Oh, I'm okay to hug people, okay to stand beside people in crowds and stuff like that," and it gets back to some sort of normal. But I don't think that hyper awareness will go away anytime soon now. Like, soon people will just,
Well, I think that's because the whole narrative in the media is opposite. Again, it's going back to what I say before about the medicine. It's they're treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Yes.
If everybody lived a healthy lifestyle, and I mean an actual healthy lifestyle, nobody would have these risk factors that double the chances of getting it.
Yes.
If everybody was healthy, this wouldn't have been a pandemic in the first place.
We would have just brushed it off, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. I felt like I had a cold for 2 days. I got better in 3. Like, it was totally fine. And I think the conversation needs to be around true health, not just masking the problems with these different, vaccines and medications and all that type of stuff.
It's an opportunity to have a conversation, really, isn't it? Like, it's
exactly
the best time to have this conversation about health, because it's highlighted, in some countries, how bad their health system really is. I've got an employee in the Philippines, and I asked her last night how things were going. She said, well, the government can't afford the vaccines. So that's, like, I was looking at the peaks of number of cases per day, and their cases were like 6,500 cases yesterday. And it's like, why? And she says, well, because they can't afford the vaccine, and then people are scared to go and get it as well. And you get a situation where, well, ultimately the only way they're going to get out of this situation is through some sort of, vaccine, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to keep getting it in that sort of environment. So you're stuffed. Right?
I don't believe the vaccine is the answer.
Vitamin D. It's not the long-term answer. It's just a short-term fix to be able to get them out again. But then, as you say, it has to be a bigger conversation. It has to be like, well, what caused this? How can we prevent it? Not just blame someone for it, but actually say, well, could we have improved the world's population health-wise, and looked at who was the most people that got it, the worst, and then figure that out. But no one seems to be doing any research about that. They're almost just worried about getting rid of it, and then go away and forget about it. But the reason it happened will never be out, really talked about.
Well, vitamin D is free, and that has been shown to dramatically improve the effects. And it's been known that vitamin D is the best thing for your immune system. But the reason why nobody's hearing about it, besides these holistic practitioners like myself who are preaching it, is because there's no money behind it.
Yeah, exactly. It's free, right?
It's there's free solutions.
Well, the government one day will probably find a way to charge tax sunlight for sure, I reckon. Like, just another thing, like water, right? They tax water. I don't ever get the concept where they're charging you for water, but anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks so much for talking to me. And I know you're on a time crunch, and we're up to the hour. So really enjoyed talking to you. And I think it starts a conversation at the end of the day. And I think you've got a website. Actually, I don't have your website address here. Oh, here it is.
I would direct people to info.thecaptainslifestyle.com.
Okay.
So there you can download my free ebook on the 4-3-2-1-30 method that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That also has the links to my social media as well as my full website and my podcast. So that you can find.
Well, we'll put that link up in the notes anyway, so people can find it. So really appreciate your time, and let's talk again sometime soon.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, John.